Uh-oh, is Lane Kiffin worried about little old LSU? Wait till you hear what the Rebels coach had to say. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well, so please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We got a ton to talk about as it is officially LSU Ole Miss week. Brian Kelly and Lane Kiffin on Monday each addressed the media to start their preparation for the game. You'll hear plenty from Brian Kelly, injury updates, potential shuffle on the offensive line. But we got to start actually with what happened in Oxford, because Lane Kiffin's meeting with the media, and right out the chute, the first question that Kiffin gets is about LSU's commitment defensively in the transfer portal and how much better that's made this team. Naturally, feels like a little bit of maybe already starting to plant the seed of why LSU is having success. Of course, 2 years ago, LSU went to Oxford, scored 49 points, and lost. Last year's game was won in Tiger Stadium, where LSU won in overtime, a game that Ole Miss, quite honestly, had no business losing. They dominated the game from start to finish, but they just kept leaving the door open for LSU. Couldn't close the game in their 4-minute offense. Garrett Nussmeier had the opportunity late. Of course, we know the dynamite touchdown pass to Aaron Anderson, which forced overtime, where Kyron Lacey's heroics won it for LSU. But Lane Kiffin was asked again, right out the chute, Coach, all that money LSU spent in the transfer portal. That's why there's so much. That's why they're so much better, right? They spend a lot of money, right?
Well, I think second year in a system defensively helps a lot of times. And they've improved their personnel also. You got 3 of the 4 starting D linemen are portal guys. 3 of the 4 secondary D line are portal guys. So they've done a great job with that. They've heavily financially invested into the portal and made that decision. That's no secret. Coach Kelly's talked about that, how much money they've spent, and it shows. Those are 3 guys that were heavily recruited and probably the 3 most expensive portal DBs in the market, and they got them all. So they did a great job with that, and now they're coaching them really well, and they're playing great.
The 3 most expensive guys in the portal market, and they got them all. So they did a great job with that. The self-proclaimed portal king hemming and hawing about the guys that LSU got in the portal. My goodness, how the tables have turned. A year ago, when Ole Miss comes to Baton Rouge with Walter Nolan and Princely Umanmielen and Chris Paul and Trey Amos and all these guys that they got out of the transfer portal, basically a full roster with the portal king where they went all in. And now, how ghastly that LSU might go spend money in the transfer portal, beating Lane at his own game, hemming and hawing through that answer. But he ain't wrong. And Brian Kelly knows it as well. Look, Brian Kelly, right now, through 4 weeks, LSU is 9th in the country in scoring defense. They're 17th in the country in total defense. They're 10th in the country in rush defense. And they're 43rd in pass defense at 182 yards per game. And that number is only what it is because LSU's had leads and teams have had to throw against LSU because they couldn't run against LSU with the 10th best rush defense in the entire country. But Brian Kelly was asked, hey, Jake Olson, you doing a better job this year? The question was about the safeties coach, Jake Olson. Of course, the safety play this year has been outstanding with DeMarcus Cooley and A.J. Hulsey. Deshaun Spears, a year older, year better, like Jordan Gilbert, providing great depth and backup. Same with Javen Toviano. The question was about Jake Olson. Listen to what Brian Kelly said.
We're getting more experienced and veteran players on the field. And from a coaching standpoint, let's not overrate this. We've got better players. And those kids played hard for us last year. But these are really good players. And so Blake's a better defensive coordinator. Kevin Peoples is a better edge coach. We're all better. I'm a better coach because we haven't lost the game. All of these things have to do with your players ultimately are playing the game. And we're gonna have a process for them, and we're gonna coach them and teach them. We're tackling so much better. And obviously that's something that we work on. So I don't want to say it's all the players and the coaches have nothing to do with it, but you start there and then you have an expectation to put those kids in a good position.
Okay, no doubt about it. Patrick Payton, Jack Pyburn, your 2 starting defensive ends, transfers. Bernard Gooden on the interior, transfer. Look at cornerback Mansour Delane, transfer. A.J. Halsey, Tamarcus Cooley, transfer. Go look at LSU's Pro Football Focus grades so far through 4 games. The highest rated player is Deshaun Spears, but he's only had 45 snaps. Next highest, Mansour Delane, defensive back, transfer. A.J. Halsey, next, 76.9 Pro Football Focus grade, transfer. It ain't rocket science. Just look up and down the list. You can see what it is for LSU. They went and invested heavily in the portal, and they got dudes. This shouldn't be a surprise to Lane Kiffin, to Brian Kelly, you or me or anybody. We've talked about this. How many times have I said this since January? LSU went into the portal and did effectively what Ole Miss and Ohio State did a year ago. They went ham. They spent a ton of money to get a bunch of one-year mercenaries to try to make a run at a title with a veteran quarterback. It worked out for Ohio State. It didn't work for Ole Miss. Now Ole Miss is sitting there feeling their way through this season. And to be very honest, this was an Ole Miss team that at the beginning of the season was not very good, despite all the hype surrounding Austin Simmons because of really one drive that he had against Georgia a year ago. But they came into this season and they did what Ole Miss does. They scored 63 against Georgia State. And then they went to Kentucky and they really struggled their way through that game. But they got out with a win 30-23. And then Simmons gets hurt. Chambliss comes in. They beat Arkansas. An Arkansas team, by the way, which blew an 18-point lead against Memphis this weekend, a poo-poo defense. And then, 2 weekends ago, I guess Arkansas blew the lead against Memphis this past weekend. And then Ole Miss had an impressive win against Tulane. But what does that really tell us about Ole Miss? Or is that more of a commentary on Tulane not actually being a contender? Well, now LSU, there's the possibility of facing 2 quarterbacks. One of the things Brian Kelly said was like a year ago when you played Texas A&M, there was the possibility of facing two quarterbacks. But you were talking about 2 guys that were stylistically very different. And ultimately, you had the pocket passer and then Marcel Reed, who came in, who gave you a completely different look. That's the big difference from that 2 quarterback system to what LSU will see on Saturday with the possibility of seeing either Simmons or Chambliss.
This week, both these quarterbacks are similar. And now they have different skill sets in terms of what, but they can run the same offense with both of these players. So I'm not saying it's easier. It's hard, right? You've got 2 really good players, but it's not as that one is a pro-style quarterback and is not going to run, and the other one is simply a dual threat. They're both very similar.
It is strength on strength. I just went through the LSU defensive numbers. You look at Ole Miss offensively, 14th in the country in passing offense, 25th in the country in rushing offense, 14th in the country in scoring at 44.8 points per game. Ole Miss's offense, LSU's defense, strength on strength. It'll be fascinating to watch. Now, when you flip it over to the other side of the ball, all those great players that I just mentioned from a year ago, they're all gone to the NFL. And what's been left is a shell of what that Ole Miss defense was a year ago, trying to find itself. But the same can be said for a very talented LSU offense, and in particular, an offensive line that is still learning and growing and developing. And Brian Kelly acknowledged there could well be some shuffling this weekend, which we'll talk about when we come back. Locked on LSU, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home. Whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. It's the kind of place where you walk in, everyone knows your name, the staff are like family, they've been serving the community for years. Well, Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. We'll see you in the neighborhood. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Love telling you about Game Time and the great partner that they've been here on Locked on LSU. And college football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Pull up Game Time, a couple of taps, you'll see amazing deals. Talk about your favorite college football games as low as $25. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So when LSU's offense is on the field, the gigantic question that we're going to have to watch and keep an eye on is that LSU offensive line against Ole Miss's defensive front. Now, a year ago, that was just a gigantic challenge with guys like Walter Nolan and Princely Umanmielen, who we just mentioned a bit ago. When you look at Ole Miss this year, that defense is different. They are a 3-3-5 base, which LSU saw a couple of weeks ago against Louisiana Tech and struggled. They are not fantastic on the defensive line. They do have the ability to play some 4 down. Defensive line is pretty good, maybe on par or a little bit less than Florida's, but Sage Ryan's back there at safety, and he's an average player at best. Their nickel, Gushkin, is kind of an average player as well. They have okay corners. It's just not the NFL-laden defense of a year ago. So if LSU's offensive line can pave the way for the running game and keep Garrett Nussmeier upright, you get this offense going a little bit, then LSU should walk into Oxford and roll to a relatively easy victory considering how well LSU's defense has been playing. But there's one giant question that needs to be asked. Of course, you're going into this week without DJ Chester for the first half. Now, DJ Chester has been really LSU's most versatile lineman. I'd argue Braylon Moore is your best and most valuable lineman. But against Clemson, when Tyree Adams went out, DJ Chester went in and played left tackle. When they sat Weston Davis to start the second half against Southeastern, DJ Chester went in at right tackle. When Braylon Moore went down on the first play against Louisiana Tech with an ankle injury, Chester went and played the rest of the game at center. Point is, he is your sixth man. He's the next up at any of the 5 spots on the offensive line. And because of the targeting call on that missed field goal, you're not going to have DJ Chester for the first half against Ole Miss. So I asked Brian Kelly, no, God forbid, but what do you do if you do end up with a situation where you need a backup offensive lineman against Ole Miss?
It's one that we have to adjust to this week. Braden Augustus went in there and did a solid job for us. This is the backup center. He'll be called on to do that again. Carius Curne now steps into that rotating tackle position for us. We have enough depth inside with Paul and Cohen Eccles. And then Ori Williams got a lot of play and did some really good things. So we just have to switch it up in the first half if we, in fact, have to go to a number 2.
You know, when I look at the LSU offensive line so far this year, there are some things that start to stand out as the sample size grows. When I look at the pass blocking grades, they really have been outstanding. I'm looking at Pro Football Focus. Now, these are the cumulative season pass blocking grades through 4 games. Paul Mabeng is your highest graded pass blocking offensive lineman with an 85.3. Josh Thompson's at an 83.2. These are outstanding grades. Braylon Moore at 79.1, despite playing a couple of games now with a bum ankle. Tyree Adams at a 75.1. These are all pass blocking grades. DJ Chester at a respectable 66.7. Again, he's moved all over the offensive line. But Weston Davis is down there at a 52. A noticeable drop for Weston Davis from the rest of your starters on the offensive line. When you look at the run blocking grades, now these are not as good as the pass blocking grades, and that makes a lot of sense. Braylon Moore is your highest graded starter at a 64.2. Remember, I told you had 3 guys in the 80s in pass block. Braylon Moore is at a 64.2, your highest rated pass or run blocking offensive lineman. And then, man, you got to go way down the list till you get to DJ Chester at a 58, Tyree Adams at a 57, Josh Thompson at a 53. I mean, sometimes I tell you, Cohen Eccles at a 49, Paul Mabenga a 46.6, and then Weston Davis at a 41.5. You get 3 guys that are rotating starters all in the 40s with their run blocking grades. I tell you all the time with Pro Football Focus, it is a metric. It's not the metric, but it's something to consider. But sometimes those numbers do confirm your eye test. And we've seen LSU struggle to run the football. And don't those numbers sort of bear that out? Well, if you're down DJ Chester and something happens to any of those 5 starters in the first half, you're going to have a pretty significant downgrade anyway you cut it across the board. Now, I also think the Carius Curne question is an interesting one because remember Carius Curne's background. He was the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country, 5-star coming out of Arkansas, signs with LSU. He's a super athlete, right? Curne is a guy that can do he's a gigantic guy. He can do he's a 300-pounder who can do backflips, right? So you're talking about a guy who he's listed at 6'5", 320. So you're talking about a super athletic guy who throughout fall camp almost ran exclusively as the second team left tackle. Well, just 11 days before the season opener, 12 days before the season opener against Clemson, Kern started taking first team reps at right tackle. Now, I asked Brian Kelly that day. This was 12 days before the opener when we saw Kern, who had not played right tackle at all, running first team at right tackle 12 days before the opener, playing a new position for the first time with the first team. And I asked Brian Kelly why that day. This was back in late August.
Tyree is going to be our starting left tackle. I think there's still a battle between Paul and Cohen Eccles, for one of the guard positions. Justin has nailed down one of the guard positions. Braylon has nailed down the center. Excuse me. The center position. And I think there's still a battle for that next tackle position, which would be the right tackle. So we moved Carius over there to compete with Weston to see who's our best. And maybe it's both of them, Matt, more than anything else. We wanted to see that maybe it's a combination or maybe it's one or the other. There wasn't enough competition there. We feel like Ori's coming along, but he wasn't there yet. So we wanted to create a little bit more competition at that right tackle position. Does that make sense?
11 days before the opener, they were still trying to create competition at right tackle. So far through 4 games, Weston Davis has been your lowest rated offensive lineman by a big margin. And to start the second half against Southeastern, DJ Chester ran out when the first team offense went and ran that first possession of the second half. It was DJ Chester at right tackle, not Weston Davis. Brian Kelly was asked about that, and he was adamant that it's still Weston Davis's job.
That position's not up for, grabs. Weston Davis has done a really good job. He needed a break. We needed to get him, back to where he needs to be as one of the 5 guys working together. So it was a good learning experience for him. But more importantly, we wanted to get DJ some more tackle reps. As you know, he's gotten plenty of center reps. He started 13 games for us last year. So this was more of an opportunity to get him in the game and get some more tackle reps because, as referenced earlier, he's our first guy in at any one of those 5 positions.
Okay. You could say that it was just getting DJ Chester tackle reps. Maybe it was like one of those situations where sometimes the quarterback needs to just go sit a series on the sideline and watch, catch their breath a little bit. Maybe that's where Weston Davis was. But 11 days before the season, you were running Carius Curne out there with the first team at right tackle. Through 4 games, the weak link on your line has been your right tackle, and you replaced your right tackle with the ones last time out. I can't help but wonder if Chester was available. Would he be an option there? I don't know. But back to the Carius Curne part of it, I did ask Brian Kelly point blank this was Monday of the Ole Miss week, what he's seen in Kern from spring through fall camp and now through his first extended action.
He's an exceptional physical specimen, but we have to be able to turn that into a technically sound offensive lineman, and he's made really good progress. I think we all know that I'm willing to play freshman at that position. We did it in 2022. It's just really difficult, when you're asking somebody to go in and play a position at this level for the first time. There's going to be a learning curve. I like what he's doing. I like the maturity that he's showing and the consistency. And I still think you're going to see him playing in some capacity, and he's got to be prepared to do so.
By the way, we saw Paul Mabenga a year ago as a redshirt freshman experience that learning curve in November. You're seeing it right now with redshirt freshmen and Weston Davis and Cohen Eccles. This is a true freshman 4 games into his college career. So gigantic ceiling. How much can he improve throughout the course of this year? But the same goes for Weston Davis. They're going to need to with no DJ Chester in the first half on Saturday against Ole Miss because of the targeting call. While you won't have DJ Chester in the first half, you will have a couple of guys returning. Brian Kelly gave an injury update. We'll wrap up with that next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Plus pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. And from footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. And I love telling you about our friends over at Our Lady of the Lake, the championship health partner of LSU athletics. Trust isn't given, it's earned. And just like LSU athletes earn their success, Our Lady of the Lake providers earn trust every day. As LSU's championship health partner, Our Lady of the Lake, part of the Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady Health System, takes care of the Tigers on the field, on campus, and across Louisiana. Whether it's sports medicine, pediatrics, heart care, or helping you recover from everyday injuries, they bring championship-level commitment to every patient. You can trust the team that cares for the team you love. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU. Together, we roar. Learn more at ololrmc.com/LSU. That's ololrmc.com/LSU. Well, one of the real benefits of having a game like Southeastern fall where it did before Ole Miss is it gave LSU an opportunity to get some players rest. West Weeks was held out. Brian Kelly said that if it were a championship game, the senior linebacker would have played, but they didn't need him to, so he got to rest that calf an extra week. Trey'Dez Green went through some pregame warmups. Actually had some pretty acrobatic catches that were caught on film while we were in a brace on that injured knee, but he didn't have to play against Southeastern. Now, he did suffer a couple of injuries as well. We saw a Caden Durham go down with an ankle injury, and Gabe Relifford, we know, injured his shoulder. Well, Brian Kelly gave an update on all of those injured players on Monday.
West Weeks ran yesterday. I think we got him at 90%, so I would say that he is probable for this game leading into it. Trey'Dez will play. He was pretty good in pregame, and then we felt like we could hold him back for another week. Caden Durham will be a day-to-day situation. He was better than we had first thought. Doesn't show the signs of a high ankle, so he's anxious to give it a shot and play. But we'll monitor him, throughout the week. Gabe Relifford has a subluxation of his shoulder, so he is out this week, and then we will determine whether surgery is necessary or he can play with it. We certainly want to respect the fact that in this situation, a defensive lineman, you want to make sure he's healthy and pass rush. And if he can't compete at the level he needs to, then we'll look at the options that are in front of us, and surgery could be an option.
That is certainly disappointing to think that surgery might be an option for Gabe Relifford, who's had such an outstanding start to his sophomore season. But, this is a game where when you look at some of those injury designations that Brian Kelly just laid out for you, having Trey'Dez Green back is significant. Ole Miss is 25th in the country in pass defense. Now, part of that has to do with who you played. I mean, you did play a G5 school. You did play Kentucky, who's just not a very good offensive team. And then you played Arkansas, who is an outstanding offensive team, and went up and down the field on you throughout. And obviously, a big part of that was Taylor Green and his ability to run the football. And they ran for over 300 yards that day. Did Arkansas against Ole Miss's defensive front. So it is worth noting and worth looking at how that matchup may all play out. But getting Trey'Dez Green back would be massively beneficial in the red zone. Having West Weeks back makes your defense whole in the middle, but you've got tons of experience for at the linebacker situation with Devon Keys there. So a healthier LSU is great benefit going to Oxford this weekend as the Tigers are going to take on the Rebels. So good news on the injury front. Looking forward to this week here on Locked on LSU as we get closer to LSU and Ole Miss. We will have our weekly recruiting chat with Shay Dixon from On 3, the Bengal Tiger. And we're going to have a crossover episode with Stephen Willis from Locked on Ole Miss. That's going to come up a bit later in the week as well. It'll be really interesting. We also did learn, of course, that LSU and Ole Miss will be annual opponents as part of the new scheduling model for the Southeastern Conference. So it'll be really interesting to see what the reaction is there and what the thought is on the Ole Miss side going into this football game on Saturday. One of the lines that I saw open over at one of the sports books had LSU open as a 1.5 point favorite. As of right now, I need to check FanDuel on the latest line, but last I saw it was Ole Miss 2.5. So, we might be seeing some pretty significant line movement there, but how much might that change before kickoff? We shall see. Okay, that's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every single day. Now, of course, remember, it's another big moment for Locked on college football fans. Locked on and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, a college football preview only Locked on can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Hey, do us a favor. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.